Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 141. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 21st of October 2022. Yes, the year is fast coming to completion. It's close to Christmas. You know, you could start playing your Parangan Christmas music. No one would judge you, certainly not me. I like my Christmas music too. You could start if you want. But we're not talking about jolly seasons like Christmas tonight, unfortunately, because recently in Trinidad, the crime situation, well, not really recently, it has continued to spike in Trinidad. Here, the crime situation, it's like it isn't under control, and it seems like they're struggling to get it under control. The people in charge seem like they don't really have too clear of a picture on exactly what to do. They don't really have too clear of a picture on exactly what to do. We're seeing murders spiking. We're seeing even in the schools. No, crime was always an issue before you saw it. Well, you see, yes, crime was always an issue. Once there's one crime, there's an issue. But there is a reality of an increase in crime, and that is a reality that we have to deal with. Now, to the person who is a victim of crime, even if it's one incident of crime, the person who is a victim of the one incident, that's one too many. But if you're not a victim, in general, you're looking at the statistics out there. If you're not yet a victim, you're looking to see how things are going out there. What are the chances? What do the chances look like out there? And in Trinidad currently, it could seem like the chances are looking a little bleak, unfortunately. It could seem like the chances are looking a little bleak. And we're looking, and well, for those of us who would have been familiar with how schools have been running in Trinidad for quite some time, we'd know that there there was always an issue of violence inside of our schools. There was always an issue of that. It's not a new thing, violence inside of our schools, but it does seem like the violence is getting a lot bolder and maybe more frequent. Someone is saying also that it might be that, there are more sightings, more people are talking about it. And I understand that argument. Some people say it's not that the crime is rising, it's that, there are more videos now, there are more pictures. Anyone could pick up something and record and show crime. Well, it's not really that, I think, because there are statistics to show this. People aren't just guessing these things. You could see how many people are dying in a year. It's not something that is just a guess. Sunset Sensei, I see you are very enthused about the chat there. But yeah, it's not just something that's a guess. Statistics can bear this out. You could see how many people are murdered in each year. It's not like in 1990 someone would have had their relative murdered. Someone would have had their relative murdered and they wouldn't know their relative was murdered and no one would report it. That's kind of going down a deep conspiratorial rabbit hole that really does not make sense. People in 1990 had a cousin or uncle or someone murdered and they never knew that person was missing. So maybe in 1990 there were 600 murders and no one knew it. That's actually not true. That's not true. It doesn't make sense. And when it doesn't make sense, it doesn't bear out in reality. You kind of have to distance yourself from it. I am someone who enjoys a good, hey, Chelsea lately is over on Instagram too. Well, well done. I'm someone that I enjoy a good bit of conspiratorial stuff myself. I like a little conspiracy thinking myself. But, when you're thinking down that line and you're trying to be reasonable, to think logically. You have to try to make sense of something in terms of the facts and whether the facts would bear out that reality. And I don't think the facts would bear out the reality that crime was always this high and it's that we're now noticing it. Now, I saw a situation over in a school pretty close to where I live in Caps East. And truth be told, as someone pointed out, with crime in general, Caps East has always been a bit of a problematic school when it comes to violence and bullying and that kind of criminal activity even. Personally, I find that kind of weird. When you have a school that is known for that, and it is known for that over a lengthy period of time, and you're wondering, like, do the authorities not see this? Can't they figure out, okay, well, this is a problem area, maybe we need to focus on this a little more? Well, I don't know how many of you saw the viral video where a maxi driver was beaten right outside of that school was beaten. Caps East is not the former junior sec. Caps East is the former senior comprehensive. And a maxi driver was beaten outside of that school. And he was beaten because he was trying to protect another student, and he was beaten pretty badly. I've said numerous times, I've said this before in a live where we spoke about school violence in specific. School violence in specific. I said, I think a lot of the solution to this is the parents must be held accountable. Listen, I don't think there should ever be a reality where some child could beat someone till the point of hospitalization and the child's parents have no part to play in this. Listen, if I have a pit bull and my pit bull bites someone, I could go to jail for that. If you have an organism under your care and the organism under your care hurts someone else, you are responsible for that action. No, yes, Chelsea lately, she says she totally agrees. I feel like the students may get suspended for about a week and that's it. And that's what might happen. And the reason that happens is because the children are seen as the responsibility of the school. So the school has to have some disciplinary measure. While in reality, that's not what is supposed to happen. Now, the idea of suspension, I think that was an old mentality where the idea was if I suspend a child for 2 weeks, their parents would deal with them pretty severely because of this punishment that the school has put on them. You are embarrassing the family. Maybe back in the 80s, if you suspended a child for 2 weeks, that child knows when they carry home that suspension letter to their parents, they're going to get quite a flogging. That in and of itself would have put the parents in a place of responsibility, but many of these parents really don't care. That child will be home, the parent goes about their business, and the child doesn't care, the parent doesn't care. A lot of these children that are bad in school are really bad because they know their parents aren't going to hold them responsible for it. And the parents allow them to do that because they know they don't have to be held responsible for it. I could allow my child to go in school and beat up somebody, and it's not like anybody going to do anything. What you're going to do, suspend him? So what, you're going to stay home and then come back in school? No. We're not suspending him. Here, how's about we sue you? And you have to pay for damages. And if you cannot pay, you make a jail. And I'm dead serious here. I'm not even joking about that. Because this is nearly like you're putting a weapon out there. It's nearly like you're putting a weapon out there. If you train your child badly and put them out there in a school with my child and they injure my child, you have put a weapon into the place with my child and they damage my child. Again, the example is a pit bull. If you train your pit bull violently and then you open your gate to let your pit bull roam the street while my child is riding their bike, if they harm my child, I want you in jail. Very similar. If you train your children like little pit bulls, little gremlins with no kind of brought-upsy and decency and discipline and send them out to a public school, well, anything that they do in there and damage someone else's child, you are held responsible for it. And you know what's the strange thing to me in some of this? One of the really strange things to me with a lot of this is that, you know, if that child were to go and damage school property, the parent might be in more trouble. If the child were to go into the school and break a mirror in the washroom, all of a sudden they bring in the child's parents and they're talking about you have to pay to replace that mirror, and then they damage a human being and they're suspended and they come back in 2 weeks. That makes no sense. I need to debate this on my thoughts, etc. Join Paul Lala says, well, when we're finished going through, you could jump in and we'll talk about it. I don't have a problem with that. You know what? If you'd like to jump in now, you could jump in and we could talk about it. You have to apply to join, but I'm not seeing an application here. Parents not to blame, Paul Lala says. How is that possible? Imagine if I released everyone's search history, who really decent humans. I don't know what that means. That parent probably can't even afford that. So, I don't care if they can afford it. If you can't afford your child beating up someone, then you have to train your child to not beat up someone. That's how that works. I don't know what you're talking about, Sunset. If you cannot afford your child to beat up someone, you have to train your child to not beat someone. That's how that works. It's just the reality. You can't afford it? Well, make sure it doesn't happen. I have no idea. I have no idea how anyone could say in such a situation the parents aren't to blame. Who else would you blame in such a situation? To me, the parents are primary to blame. Secondly, I've said this before. This isn't the first time I'm saying this. I've said this before. The school is partly to blame. And here's why I will say the school is partly to blame. And that is basically because of our public schooling system. The nature of our public schooling system puts that strain on the school. But I'll still put some blame on them for that. Because a school, to me, is supposed to provide a safe learning environment for students. If a child is too indisciplined to be in the school, then they should not be in the school. Sunset, you need to slow down. It's not making sense. I think the Kush had something sprinkled on it tonight. But yeah, I put that hierarchy at that level. So the school has to ensure that the children in the school are under the right discipline to remain in the school. If the children aren't under that discipline, then they can't remain in the school. Now, one of the problems with the public education as it stands is every child is supposed to get an education. So they're very focused on every child being in the school. But I think that's not exactly how it's supposed to be. If a child is too indisciplined to be in a certain school, send them to a military school. That should be the rule of it. There's no way a student should be beating up multiple students in a school. That should never happen. Now, I understand a school is supposed to, allow your child some socialization into the real world, and the real world has some difficult experiences, but no way should I be sending my child into a danger zone. To many students, to many children, schools are the only place they are witness and exposed to that level of violence. Why not police? Why not have police in every school? Because that's not the police's job. The police job. So it's not society's job to raise your child. It's not society's job to raise your child. I despise that idea. Like, this child is misbehaved and it's society's fault. No. Partially, but primarily, it's mainly the parents' fault. It's not the police's job to discipline your child. If you know your child is out of control, then you call the police on your own child. It shouldn't be that someone else has to do that. It takes a village to raise a child, partially, but it takes a parent. It takes two parents to raise a child, not a village in the total sense. The village is the outside. If you think of it as concentric circles going out, the first responsibility for that child would be the people that are capable of making the child. Let's speak reality. A village isn't needed to make a child. If a male and a female go out into the middle of the jungle somewhere, wherever, in the middle of the jungle, they could make a child and they would have no village there. It's not a village's responsibility. First up, it's the responsibility of the two people that made that child. And I think how the village allows themselves to be responsible for that to some extent is by holding the two people that are primarily responsible. The village shouldn't be holding themselves responsible. How the village helps to raise that child is to say, and we do it currently. So a father who doesn't want to help raise his child is told by the village, you don't have a choice. We're going to take your money by force from you and make sure you help mind your child. That's how the village helps. And I think the village is supposed to continue down that line. So if both parents aren't making sure that the child is disciplined, well, that's where the village comes in and keeps them responsible for it. You can't be a member of our village and your charge is out there beating up other members of our village. That doesn't make sense. That's not sustainable. And I saw Paul says, my son selling dope, the police not helping, etc. I understand that. If your son is selling dope, I would suggest to you that very likely you had some problems inside of there way before. And God, in all of his wisdom, created us in such a way that children are born ultimately weaker than their parents. Ultimately weaker than their parents. There's no way a 6-year-old can overpower their parents. You have the physical power to literally. I don't understand how people talk about they have a 6-year-old and they're out of control. You're not moving from here. You're not moving from here. That's all. Wow. How is a 6-year-old out of control? But what happens is people don't want to discipline themselves to discipline their children. And the 3-year-old is out of control. They leave it till the 6-year-old is out of control. They leave it till the 10-year-old is out of control. Then when the 16-year-old is out of control, all of a sudden now the 16-year-old is a drug dealer. The 16-year-old is a drug dealer. And they're saying, well, what am I supposed to do now? How could I stop this? They have a gun. How I could do anything to stop? Well, here's the thing. You're trying a little late now. That was supposed to be done. That was supposed to be done way before. That's when that was supposed to be done. You were supposed to be training your child all along. And if, as a responsible village, hoping to keep all of the parents responsible for their children, since the child was 6, if this child at 6 is in a primary school and showing signs of indiscipline, because I could assure you, these children who were beating up the driver and the student in that maxi, those students, that's not the first time they got in trouble. I could put money on the line for that. Children don't wake up on a school morning at 16 years old and decide, you know what? All my life, I've been a well-disciplined good boy. But I decide I want to be a bad boy now. Today, I will go in school and be a bully. All of a sudden at 16. That does not happen. If it did happen, I would advise you to probably go get your child's brain checked out. There may be a tumor sitting on a part of their brain that may be tampering with their decision making, because that's not normal. That's not how people do it. A child who is violent and a bully at 16 very, 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 very likely was violent and a bully at 6. They knew this all along. It was known for quite some time. So if, as the village, we're looking out and making sure that, okay, when we see the 6-year-old misbehaving, we aren't looking to suspend the 6-year-old. We aren't looking to put Johnny in timeout. We're looking for his parents. And if that continues, then you have to send your child to military school. Your child cannot be a part of the regular population. And this, I probably not literally, but in the olden days, and it's more difficult to do things like that now, but in the olden days, you were thrown out of the village. That's what happened. You were, what's the word for that? No, not excommunicated. Oh, gosh, I can't remember the exiled. Thank you. You were exiled. That's what happened. You were exiled from the village. Listen, in a single parent household, for example, a mother cannot discipline a child and a father is absent, etc. And I understand that problem. A single parent household provides unique challenges, lots of unique challenges, and I agree. That's why, as a village, we should be doing all in our power to encourage there to be no single parent households. Children aren't born by a single parent. No child came into this world via a single parent. I mean, even Jesus was immaculate conception, but he still had a daddy. Yeah, he still had a daddy. So no one comes in this world by one parent. Everyone enters by 2 parents. I think as a society, what we should be pushing for is to is to ensure that we push towards double parent households. And something is going really awry with that. If we're looking at our society, you look back in the 60s and then you look to now. Is the instance of single parenthood on the rise or on the decrease? And what changes did we make in society that triggered that? Because it's obvious that that's a problem. Why do children challenge their parents? Now, the reality is children challenging their parents is a natural thing. It's supposed to happen. Children are supposed to challenge their parents. Now, the teenage rebellious phase is a realistic phase. Even very well-disciplined, well-behaved children will generally challenge their parents more during the teenage phase because they're coming out of the stage where they obey everything the parent says and they're becoming their own individual, their own person. So obviously they have to challenge the automatic beliefs of their parents. That's true. Now, those challenges are supposed to be healthily done. Challenging your parents isn't going on a block and starting to sell drugs and be a violent criminal. No, that's not how you challenge your parents. That's indiscipline. That's crime. That's indiscipline and that's crime. So they're supposed to challenge their parent, but that's supposed to be done in a healthy way. Wendell says Western values keep changing for the worse. Some of these problems don't exist in the East. I agree. Now, there's a careful balance to be had here. We want people to have freedom. In the West, that's a reality. We want people to have freedom. But if you give everyone freedom to do anything, the consequences of that would be dire. The problem that creates is, how do we inhibit the freedom of people without inhibiting the freedom of people, if you understand what I mean? So you want it to be that you don't have the state out there, because this is not what you want. You don't want Dr. Rowley and the government coming in and making sure that if two of you make a child, we are going to force you by legal decree to stay together forever. And if you attempt to leave, the police, we're going to send the task force in. If you attempt to break up your family, the task force is going to come and return you to your family household by force. No, we don't actually want that. But part of the problem that we're facing in the Western society, I think, is we've had degradation of not all, but of so many of the social restraints outside of governance. So all we have is the law and the government. But the religious and social aspects we once had, which would have inhibited freedom to some extent without legally inhibiting freedom, are cast away. Nothing is taboo. Nothing is forbidden. Nothing is frowned upon. I heard once someone, a psychologist, talk about what was the word? Enforced monogamy. Enforced monogamy. And they went to town on him. They hated the idea of that. What do you mean enforced monogamy? Are you going to force people? No. And what he was talking about is, on the social side, what you want is that socially there's enforced monogamy. The shotgun wedding. Now, I'm not saying this is necessarily good in all cases. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about just the social realities that would have helped with some of these situations. A shotgun wedding. That was a reality at one point in time in the world, where it was known if you as a man got a girl pregnant, you're going to get a lot of social pressure to make sure you marry that person. Now, maybe you don't want the father of the girl to pull a shotgun and force a man to marry her. Maybe you don't want that. But if you do away with all of it, we end up with the world we currently have. And how is that working for us? All right. Let's jump into this article. Mother of beaten teen. I am not sending my child back to that school. Vidya Lal, mother of the Carpetchama West Secondary School student who was beaten along with a maxi driver on Monday, says she will never send him back to that school ever again. She said she wants justice for her son and for those responsible for hurting him to be held accountable. After school finished, students of both the Carpichima West and East Secondary Schools planned to beat up 16-year-old Rashid Lal. The driver of the maxi he was in, Virendra Singh, tried to intervene but was beaten along with Lal. Both suffered several injuries. Lal said her son is in a lot of pain, cannot raise his arms, and several parts of his body are blue, black, and swollen. She said at around 1 a.m. on Thursday, an ambulance was called to their home because her son could not breathe well. To date, she said only the vice principal of her son's school had contacted her. Nobody's saying or doing anything for my child. We have to do everything for ourselves. I'm a single mom and I need help and I need justice. Her son is a US citizen, so she made a report to the US Embassy, which told her it will investigate. She said the issue stemmed from an earlier incident at Carpichima West in which a male student was trying to hit a female student and her son blocked and protected her. This, she said, angered the male student who hit her son in the face. Rashid returned the blows. Lal, that's the mother, was then called to come to the school and the mother overheard the student tell her son this not over and that he would be waiting for Rashid after school. Now, how bold is it for a student in the presence of a student's mother? I suppose that would have been in the presence of a principal, etc. Yes, you're right, Mantis Shadow. Yes, you're right. That is the psychologist I'm speaking about. You're right. But yes, how bold of it is of it for a student to say that in front of a parent? No scene, Sunset. No scene, no scene. How bold of it? How bold of them? And that suggests that the student didn't care. They weren't afraid of the consequences of that. And I said this during the last video I did about the violence inside of schools. These students obviously don't care because they record these things themselves. In a world where the parents of these students were held accountable for these actions, if you as a parent had to pay or go to jail, good evening SM Resources. If you as a parent had to pay or go to jail if your child damaged someone else, I can assure you, you would have cared a lot more what your child did in school. And that child would have cared a lot more what they did. These students are taking their own phones and recording themselves beating up other people. That means they obviously don't care. There's no consequence to this action. There's no consequence to this action, so they aren't afraid of it. They're recording it themselves and putting it up online. They don't care. There aren't any consequences to these actions. And the student telling the child in front of the mother that this isn't finished and I'm going to come for you after is further evidence of that they don't care because there aren't any consequences. I could assure you, if the parent had to pay or go to jail, the parent who was paying for the phone for these children, because I could tell you these children that have all their iPhones and etc. You know, some people are saying that these parents don't care, holding the parents accountable won't work because these parents don't care. I don't agree with that. I don't actually agree with that because the parents do care. Well, it's the court system with the police. So it's very simple. It's not a hard thing to figure out because as the example I used at the beginning of the video was a pit bull. Right now in many countries in the world, if you have a dangerous dog and your dangerous dog harms someone, they can take you to court. You have to pay for the damages. You have to pay further than that. And according to what it is, you may even make a jail for that. And that's how the system is supposed to work. That is idiotic, Paul Lala. That's like saying if you have a pit bull and you open your gate and allow your dog on the road and it mauls and kills someone, that you should take the dog and put the dog in jail and leave the person free. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. It really isn't. If you have something under your charge and it damages someone else, you are responsible. If you cannot control a child, then don't make one. If you cannot control the child you already made, then don't send them to a public school to damage someone else. That is dog. We are human. Exactly my point, Paul Lala. Paul, we are humans. So the responsibility is even higher. The responsibility is even higher. And under the age of 18, it is said that humans don't have their full senses about them under the age of 18. That's why everything a human does under the age of 18, you're calling their parents to sign for this. The parents have to sign for this. The parents have to sign for this. Well, if you are responsible for the child, then you are responsible for the child. If you're saying that the child is responsible for their own actions, then you're saying the child is an adult. And we have already determined in society that the child is not an adult. Children under the age of 18, they technically, psychologically, they determine that basically they're like sociopaths. They don't fully process long-term consequences. Their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed yet. An important thing that the prefrontal cortex does is it helps us process long-term consequences of things. You could make decisions and plan for the future better after you have your prefrontal cortex developed. Now, that develops sometimes up till the age of 25. But they're saying at least for sure we know that someone under the age of 18 does not have this. They do not have that bit of development in their body, so the people that are in charge of them are responsible for their actions. It's like you have a little human that isn't capable of, think of it as a baby. If you have a toddler 4 years old who can walk, yes I do. Paul Lala, yes I do. If you have a 4-year-old who can walk and you leave them in your yard and they walk out into the road and the worst happens. I don't even want to mention it. They walk out into the road and the worst happens. Who do you think is going to be held responsible for that? Is everyone going to say, oh no, look at what this child did. This child's so stupid, man. That child should have known better. No, they're going to say that parent is irresponsible. You're going to have a clamor across the entire country to hold that parent responsible. Remember when the 4-year-old walked away from their home and eventually we know what happened? What was the country asking? Where were the parents? What was the parent doing? They wanted some adult held responsible for that action because it was irresponsible as an adult to allow that to happen. It's not the child's fault because the child cannot process that yet. The child hasn't reached that stage of processing yet. And we have determined that at the age of under 18, they haven't reached the stage of processing these things yet. That's why they go to ITC if they have to be held. That's why they go to ITC. So here's how I would put this. You're saying the wholly child responsible, put them to ITC. The parent should be doing that. I remember, I'm not that old, I'm a millennial, I'm not that old, but I remember in my primary school days, I remember very distinctly a boy that misbehaved and his mother, a single mother, called the police into the school to discipline the child. That's what I think that's where I think that responsibility is. If you're saying YTC should hold the children that cannot be controlled, well then let the parent take the child, carry them to YTC and tell YTC, hey, keep them please because I cannot control them. That's what you should do. And a parent is supposed to know, yes Nisi, the timing as usual is impeccable. But if as the parent, you're supposed to know when this child is out of control way before the school does. A parent that is paying attention will know. You're supposed to know, okay, I can no longer control this child. So here's what I will do. I will go to Milat and speak to the military people in charge there and tell them, please take my child because I can no longer control them. Please take my child and discipline them better than I can. That's what you do. You don't send them out there to do something, harm someone else's children. You see, it's not a case here where the child is just harming themselves or the child is harming the parent. The child is hurting someone else's child. Someone else's child. I took the time to discipline my child that I put resources into, my child that I spend my hard-earned dollars to send my child out to school. And when I send my child there expecting that they will learn and they will come back with an education in their head, they come back with a bus head. They come back struggling to live. And then the parent is telling me, oh shucks, you know, I always knew that child was out of control. And what you gonna do, boy? You is make the child, but you can't make them mind. And what? I don't want to hear that. I recall a friend of mine. I think that was in the Trini City area. And a friend of mine. They have some neighbors. I think I told this story already. They have some neighbors who had cats, multiple cats, quite a few cats. I'm not sure what you said there. Quite a few cats. And the cats would come over, they would come over to the neighbor's property and climb all on the neighbor's vehicles and scratch up their paint and scratch up multiple vehicles' paint, scratch their doors, poop in their yard, etc., etc. That's what would happen. Now, the neighbor spoke to the neighbor and said, sir, no, it was a lady, was like, ma'am, your cat's scratching up my kind. Please keep them inside or curl their nails or something like that. You have to do something about the cats that's scratching up my kind. You know what the lady said? Oh gosh, you know them and scratch up my car too. Needless to say, those cats lost all 9 of their lives soon after. And that's what you cause when you do things like this. You see, that's the reason you have to hold people responsible for an action. That's the reason you hold people responsible for an action. Because if you don't, you are telling me that, okay, well, I have to take matters into my own hands. If my child goes to school, your child damages mine, and you're like, oh, shucks, you know, I always know this child was in discipline. What we go do, boy? Well, here's what. Maybe I have to take this into my own hands. Yes, I heard that story with the 2 men who were shot for the cow. I heard that story too. Isn't that the same issue with the farmers and the cows? Exactly. Exactly. There's an instance right now. I think I have that story actually pulled up, you know, that cow story. An instant where did that happen? In the East, where 2 men lost their lives reportedly for killing a cow. And the thing is, it was a back and forth. And in that, you could probably even blame the authorities for not holding people responsible earlier. So the cow reportedly went into some farmer's land and ate some of their produce. The farmers decided, well, seeing as the man can't control his cow, we would control his cow for him. And they killed the cow. And they had some beef. Unfortunately, allegedly, the 2 of them were murdered afterwards for that very reason. That's the issue. You must hold people accountable if you want to have a civilized society. Now, I saw further up there, Paul was asking me, if someone damaged my kid for whatever reason and my child hits the other and the worst happens, would you take blame? I have no choice but to take blame in that instance, don't I? That's what I'm saying. You have no choice. You have to train your child in that way. Now, the thing is, if someone hits your child and in an altercation your child does something, that may be self-defense. We're not talking about self-defense. We're not talking about a fight that, you know, just happened to happen. That's not what we're talking about. That's where you go to a court case and you determine these things. Now, if your child is a murderer, of course you're held accountable for that. If you raise a murderer, who should we hold accountable for that? If you send your murderer out into the midst of my nice little child, who should we hold accountable for that? Like, I find it dumbfounding that some people find parents shouldn't be held accountable for their children's actions. And I think thinking like that is the reason we are in problems right now in our schools, because there are some parents who, how many times we have heard it, you make the child but you don't make their mind. I actually don't agree with that. I don't agree with it, because there's this strange thing you notice. Well-behaved, disciplined parents strangely have well-behaved, disciplined children. That's just so strange how that happens. Seeing as you make the child but you don't make their mind. It's just so strange that indisciplined, bad behaved parents have indisciplined, bad behaved children. What? Oh my good, what? Scientists should get in and study this very unique phenomenon. They should get in and study this. How does this happen? Why is it when you look at who is in prison, something like upwards of 80% are from single parent households? So strange. So strange. Sunset Sensei says it have strict parents with delinquent children, circumstances plus influence. Now, I've heard that said so many times that, don't be too strict on your children. Don't be too strict on your children, because you know what? Your children will turn out bad. So many people that say that are so slack on their children. And you know what I've noticed? The strict parents still have better children than the slack parents warning them, don't be too strict on your... What? I rather you be too strict than too lenient. Because we are seeing the consequences of the too lenient parents. We've seen the consequences of the too strict parents. Yes, they get older and they have scars from youth. There's an employee that works with us in construction, and he always says that he says, I still have scars from when I was a child. My father used to really do it to me. I am still traumatized, and he is going up to 60, and he still talks about that. And I don't deny that there may be many people traumatized by overly strict and maybe to some extent abusive parents. I do not wish for more traumatized adults. But if we had to make a choice between 5% more traumatized adults or 10% more violence in schools that risks students dying, I think we would all choose a little more traumatized adults. Let's earn the side of a little over strict. Let's earn that side. That's something that I always find so strange. People are so quick to warn, don't be too strict, but they're so rarely warn, don't be too lenient. And I am a teacher. I teach. I see the consequences of that action. I could look at a student. I could talk to a student, and from talking to a student, I could know the kind of parents they have. If it is that you make a child and you don't make their mind, how can I figure that out? You are asking if I have a child, Paul? Well, you're hearing the answer to that. We have to make the sacrifice for the child. That's true. That's very true. You can't be out there saying that you don't have responsibility for your child's actions. You make the child and you don't make their mind. That's untrue. I don't buy to that. Now, I understand that you aren't in control of all circumstances. You aren't in control of everything surrounding your child. Your child may go out there, they may choose the friends they choose, etc., etc., etc. But still, let me tell you a big part of that. Children oftentimes not decide, but frame their discipline level at a very young age. So, as a parent, you may have between the ages of 0 and 5 to really put serious training in on your child. Because after the age of 5, when your child goes out to school, they select their friend group. And many parents say, it's not my child, It's the friends they with. Well, here's the thing. Your child selected their friends. So the friends help to train the child in the manner that they are. The friends help it. So your important duty as a parent before the age of 5 is to make sure that your child is so trained that they select a good friend group after the age of 5. It's still on you, the parent. You had them 0 to 5. And you had them laughing at when they were rude, when they now started to talk and they say, shut up. You laugh. Tell auntie shut up again. Tell auntie shut up again. Shut up. Okay, well, that's what you're training. To the end, the child still have freedom of choice. Don't matter how you bring up a child. I agree. A child always has freedom of choice. But still, how do you explain that you could speak to a child and guess the kind of parents they have? The freedom of choice is partially chosen for the child. It's partially chosen for the child based upon their parenting and the give up attitude that many, and I will say this because currently I live in the ghetto too. I've taught so many students from the ghetto. I've offered free lessons to ghetto students and their parents. And their parents will, when the child starts enjoying the lessons, the parents will use the lessons as a punishment. The child is enjoying the lesson. The child didn't wash somewhere, so well, I ban you from going lessons. And I walk over to the parents' house and I'm like, but where is little Johnny? Nah, I ban him from coming, I ban him from coming. He wasn't behaving right. Okay, well, where is he? He in the road there playing with his friend. What? What? Who teaches parenting like that? And that's what happens. And then that parent will tell me 10 years later, when little Johnny is still on the road playing with his friend, but this time he's smoking and selling, that parent would say, no, I try my best with little Johnny, but you make the child, but you can't make the mind. You're a liar. You are a liar. I'm sorry, but you are a liar. Because I saw how you made that child's mind, and you made their mind into the way it is. And as I keep saying, it's just so strange to me that people say that, but nonetheless, well-disciplined parents have well-disciplined children. Why does that happen? Can someone explain to me how it happens? Paul says we all try, bro. I won't recommend for anyone to take their children to police my own experience. Well, that's up to you. But if your child is determined to put you in jail yourself, if your child is bringing guns into your home, if your child is a thief, well, maybe you should be going to the police. It's so strange. So many people are quick to mock the mothers who are on the TV, and he was a good boy, and he was a good boy. That is the same attitude. That is the same attitude. Because if we're saying you could make the child, but you can't make their mind, when the mother says he's a good boy, well, he probably was really a good boy. She made the child as a good boy, but he just decided all of a sudden that one time he decided, and who knows how he decided, I never knew he was a bad boy. What they did me when I was 15. I guess your parents took you to the police, Paul Lala. Are you currently a criminal, by the way, Paul Lala? Are you responding to these messages from inside of a prison? The mother said, Lal said one of the students told Rashid he was fighting on behalf of his cousin. This was very unfair because it wasn't one-on-one. It was a gang. They didn't want to beat my child. They wanted to kill my child because it could never be all these children for one child and the van driver. She hailed Singh as a hero, adding that unfortunately, Rashid is blaming himself for everything and has been crying. I'm so grateful for him. If it wasn't for him, my son would have been dead. And I don't doubt the mother. I don't doubt the mother. Because there was an instant, we're in 2022, that may have been 10 years ago, where one of those same schools, CAPS, West, Carpi West, just when they turned to West, and a fight happened on the junction, was that Marabella? I believe it was Marabella. Right outside, what's that stadium there? Is it Larry Gooms down Marabella? Larry Gooms is Marabella or Manny Ramjan? Whichever one it is down on that side. And there was a football match down there. And listen, if you're a student or someone at student age or have a child who is a student and you want to keep your child out of harm's way, maybe some of those kind of football matches with certain schools, just don't go to them. But yes, after a football match, the children walked out the road and a fight happened. And the same kind of thing, a group of students ganged up on a little boy and beat him. And he was murdered. Dead. No more. A little boy. That's the end of these things. So when we're talking about who holds responsibility and what can we do and what can we do, I don't think throwing our hands up and saying, well, the children are at fault and the children decide how they want to be, I don't even think that's a viable option. Because that option eventually leads to dead children. You see, as we already spoke about, children sometimes, a lot of the times, they don't even have some of that understanding of future consequences as ingrained. And on top of that, a mob, a group, a gang doesn't function like a single person. They don't. So when these indisciplined children who are already predisposed to not thinking about consequences form a gang and start doing things like this, it gets really scary really quickly. I don't think any one individual student who murdered that little boy wanted to kill him. I don't think any one of them decided in their mind that this evening I'm going to murder someone. No, I don't think they did. But that's the thing. They weren't thinking about it. And if we keep throwing our hands up and saying, well, we can't hold the parents responsible, and well, when the children do it, just send them to YTC. Well, we'll have a full YTC and a full grave with dead young children. That's where it ends up. And it doesn't just peak at a level. It will get worse and worse and worse, as we are seeing is happening currently. And when things like this happen, what eventually goes on is you get a segregation of society. You get a segregation of society because I can tell you, my children in the future won't be going to schools like that. They won't. If I have the resources, if I am capable, I'll make sure my child doesn't go there. As this mother already said, she isn't going to send her child there. And any parent with a little thinking about their child, they'll be worried. Parents who really care are trying to transfer their children out from those schools at a record pace. And what eventually happens after? You leave a school there with only the worst of the worst children. And what's going to happen to the school? And it's not only the students in the school that would happen too. Because the beaten maxi driver's brother, he won't work for schools again. Narendra Singh, brother of Route 3 maxi driver Virendra Singh, who was beaten by a group of school children last week, said it has taken a deep mental and emotional toll on their family, and the man is recovering slowly. On Monday, the driver was beaten. We know that Narendra Singh said his brother, by doctor's orders, cannot drive for the next 6 months. Who is paying the man for those 6 months down? I think they should go through the video, find the children responsible, find their parents, and fine, without the D, ending with an E, fine their parents. Your child is responsible for a man being unable to provide for 6 months. Who is going to pay him for that? Is YTC going to pay him for that? When you send the boys to YTC, is YTC going to somehow pay him for that? No. I say find the parents. And if the parents like, I don't have the money, well, take your child out of school that is so indisciplined now, send them to mix concrete, let them work for the 6 months, and take that money that they work for and send it to pay for the driver. And I can assure you that 6 months of work where they will get no money and all the money will go to helping for the consequence of the action they did, that will be a way better lesson than throwing up your hand and saying, I make the child, but I can't make their mind, you know. That's a way better lesson any day. Any day. That is the lesson that should be taught. Not just suspend the child and in 2 weeks the child come back in school and bouncing. As a bad man, you know. That's a chip on his shoulder, you know. I real bad. You see, all you see me in the video, I the one and I beat up a big maxi driver. You know. That's what you're creating. And as he went on there, the brother said that when his brother has recovered, he has already made the decision that he is not going to work for those schools again. He's not going to work for schools again. And if you're a maxi driver and someone calls you and says, hey, I have a job for you. Pick up my child from school now. And you're like, yeah, what school? Camps. You as a maxi driver now, you're thinking, well, you know, I don't want to work there either. And that's what we get. It's not only the students that we're making sure that the worst of the worst students are the only students left in certain schools. That's not the only thing that we're doing. Even the auxiliary services, even the additional services on the outside, you're going to lose them all. The lady who might come out and sell Polori on the road as you walk out, she doesn't want to be there anymore because these children are bandits now. You know, something very interesting I saw in that video, very, very interesting, and I couldn't forget it, that I heard in that video, not so, was someone who was recording it told another person, hey, hide your phone, boy. Them fellas is thief phone. I don't know how many of you heard that video. I don't know how many of you heard the video. I heard it. I recall very well. Someone in the video that was recording said that. Them fellas is thief phone, boy. Hide your phone. That means they very well knew the characters that were engaged in this. And they weren't of the savory kind. So the services in and around the school, you're going to lose them. No one is going to want to service a school with that kind of behavior. You're losing that too. And you're losing the auxiliary services. You're losing the parents that pay attention. You're losing the students that might excel. And all you're getting is a school that accumulates the most indisciplined students in the country. And then when the school reaches to an extent and the school is a sore on the entire country, all of a sudden now we'll be like, oh my God, how did it end up like this? Well, it ended up like this because no one held anyone responsible. That's how we would have ended up like that. You know, today I wanted to get into talking about general crime and the crime that is spiking all about too, but it's okay if we stuck with the schools. It's okay that we stuck with the schools. No good teachers will go to those schools. Correct. Correct. You know what? For the parents who want to do that, you know, do it. Do it. Y'all continue refusing to be held responsible for your actions. You know what that's going to do? Well, this video has been sponsored by Mindful Education. Mindful with 2Ls_education. That's the institution that I run. We offer homeschool teaching classes for ages preschool straight up to CXC. And I can assure you the kind of behavior that is going on in schools like that is going to boom Mindful Education and other such services. Parents more and more are going to realize that this kind of stuff in these schools isn't sustainable for my child's survival. And they're going to look for alternatives. So if any parents out there are looking for alternatives, I already have one. If you are so interested, Mindful_education, mindful with 2Ls_education is the page over on Instagram. You can feel free to head over there and follow us. The information on how to register, if you are so interested, is over there. What we offer are school pods, learning pods, pod style learning, where classes are like 6 students, really small, and we are not aiming for classroom style. We are not aiming for classroom style teaching. We don't even use the same classroom style subjects. We pass through all the subject material, but we don't teach in the same subjects necessarily. So math isn't just math, it's math and logic to teach a certain to teach math from even a different understanding, where you get the logic behind the math. And English is English, reasoning, and rhetoric. It's not just English language. We're teaching English, reasoning, and rhetoric. And that's even to preschool straight up to CXC. We're doing these things. So if you are interested in such, head over to Mindful Education and be sure to register your students over there. We've already begun and it's going well. We also offer private tutoring, like one-on-one tutoring sessions where a tutor comes to your home and teaches whichever subject you are interested in. We offer those services too, but that's a bit more pricey. So if you are interested in such, contact us over on Mindful Education and be sure to register your students. We had a early primary school class that we started this week past year, were the first classes, and the early primary school classes were really good. They were really good. The parents were pleased, really happy at the progress we were making and the nature of the teaching. The children were really involved. So if you are interested, be sure to head over there. And as I said, the behavior of parents in not holding themselves responsible for the actions of their children would just lead to more and more of this in the future. More and more parents are going to pull their children from schools. They're going to do it. The mother already said it. She's not going to send her child back to that school. And do you even blame her? Do you even blame her? As a parent, especially as someone like a mother, as a mother who has that empathetic feel towards your child, would you want to send your child to a school where the children are trying to literally kill them? It's not going to happen. All right, folks, that's all we have for now. Are there any further questions or comments before I dive out? Any further questions or comments, or is that it? Hey, let me check to make sure the YouTube comments are there. I think I generally support your idea, but there are certainly rare times where a parent did all they could and due to biological makeup or afflictions of the child's psychopathy, tumor, etc. That's true. Their training could be rendered ineffective. I think a complete medical examination should be undertaken by the parent before the parent is penalized. I agree with that man to shadow over there on YouTube. True, with power comes responsibility generally. Actually, I think it's age 25 when the brain is around age 25 when it's fully developed. Yes, it's around age 25, but it's not an exact thing. It could be later than 25. It could be before 25 too. Who can afford that? Well, the thing in Trinidad is a lot of those services are free. We live in the land of the free. Free services. So a lot of those evaluations might be free in Trinidad if it's what you're looking for, especially if it's something that has been court ordered. If you court ordered to get an evaluation, well, yes, but are they really doing the best job? Who? I don't know. I think Trinbagonian society is already fractured, to be honest. I agree, Mantis Shadow. And it's going to become more and more fractured as this kind of behavior continues. Many schools already avoid it as much as possible. Correct, Mantis Shadow. Correct. As much as possible, and it's going to get worse. Ha! Oh, now I get what you see. The evaluators, if they would be doing their job. Well, that's a whole other discussion there, Sunset. That's a whole other discussion about the public servants actually doing the jobs that they are being paid to do. All right, folks, it was nice. We've come to the end of another week. It is Friday. Yeah, you should. Experience life, you should. It's another Friday. We've come to the end of another week. It was nice. Boy, I have everything right here ready. Fight me. It was nice. I will see you guys next week, Monday. Maybe Tuesday. Is Monday a holiday? I feel like Monday is going to have a lot of noise to try and do. To try and do a live session on Monday is going to have a lot of noise. So maybe Tuesday. Maybe Tuesday. If you don't see me Monday, you understand why. Maybe Tuesday, maybe Monday. I'm not making any assurances quite yet. But I'll see you guys next week for the next Mindful Live starting at 9:15 usually p.m. I will see you guys then. I hope you are educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you all later. Peace. But even persons in Trinidad and Tobago segregate themselves into secure communities to escape the violence. Yes,